I want to tell you about a pistol that might be the single biggest return story in modern gun history. And there's a good chance you've never even held one, because most of the ones that got sold came right back across the counter. Here's the setup, and it's a true story, not a campfire tale. A major American manufacturer, one of the oldest names in the business, announced a brand new 9mm carry pistol at SHOT Show to an absolute standing ovation. Gun writers who'd seen the prototype called it a genuine breakthrough. Low bore axis, slim single-stack design, soft shooting for its size, priced right in the sweet spot for a first-time carry gun. Orders poured in before it even hit shelves. Then, actual customers started shooting the actual production guns. And within weeks, this pistol had one of the worst reliability track records anyone at the counter had ever seen on a mainstream release. Jams, failures to feed, slides that wouldn't lock back. In some of the worst reported cases, guns firing when they shouldn't have been able to. The company had to pull it, redesign the internals almost from scratch, and reissue it a full year later. A huge share of that first production run ended up right back at the dealer, traded in, boxed up, and shipped home for warranty work, or just sitting in a drawer because the owner didn't trust it anymore. I'm going to walk you through exactly what went wrong with it, point by point, because it's not just a fun horror story. Every single mistake this company made is a mistake I still watch first-time gun buyers walk into today, on completely different guns for completely different reasons. And I'm going to tell you what the fix actually looked like, because that part matters more than the failure does. I'm Andrew. I'm 15 years behind the counter and the gunsmithing bench at a rifle and pistol shop. I was selling guns the year this particular pistol launched, and I remember the exact feeling in the shop, genuine excitement, followed within about 6 weeks by genuine dread every time a customer walked in with one in a range bag, because we all knew what was probably coming. Here's the filter I want to run this whole story through, and it's the same filter I use for every gun that crosses my counter. Was this thing actually tested the way a defensive carry gun needs to be tested before real people trusted their lives to it? Or was it tested the way a marketing calendar needed it to be tested? Everything that went wrong here traces back to that one question. Problem 1. The design solved a problem nobody was actually complaining about. The whole pitch was a hesitation-locked breech system, something borrowed loosely from an old design concept out of the early 20th century, revived specifically to get a slimmer, lighter slide, with softer recoil in a compact 9mm. Clever idea on paper. Here's the issue against the filter. Nobody was walking into gun shops begging for a lower bore axis on a compact carry gun. People wanted something that just worked, every single time, out of the box. The company built a solution looking for a problem and dressed it up as innovation, when what most buyers actually needed was boring, proven reliability. Problem 2. It got announced before it was actually finished. This is the part that should scare every buyer reading this. On any gun, from any company. The pistol was shown, praised, and pre-sold based on hand-built prototypes and a very limited number of test guns, built with far more care and hand-fitting than the actual assembly line could realistically replicate at volume. Against the filter, this fails before a single customer gun is ever sold. You cannot know if a design is reliable until you've actually built it the way you're going to sell it, at the tolerances a real factory line can hold, not the tolerances a shop full of senior gunsmiths can hand-fit for a magazine reviewer. Problem 3. The recall, when it came, was quiet instead of loud. Once real owners started reporting real problems, the company's first instinct wasn't to get in front of it hard and fast. It was a slow trickle of acknowledgement, sending exchange guns out one at a time, telling individual customers their unit sounded like an isolated issue, right up until the volume of complaints made that story impossible to keep telling. Against the filter, this compounds the actual mechanical failure with a trust failure, and trust failures are much harder to fix than trigger groups are. I had customers who never came back to that brand at all, for anything, over how the return process was handled, not just the gun itself. Problem 4. The fix, when it finally landed, actually worked, and almost nobody heard about it. Here's the part of this story that doesn't get told enough. About a year after the disaster, the company went back, genuinely re-engineered the internals, tightened the tolerances that had been loose on the rushed initial run, and re-released it. By most independent accounts, the corrected version was a legitimately decent, reliable little carry gun. It just never recovered the reputation. That first impression was permanent. Against the filter, this is the most important lesson in the whole story. A gun's reputation gets built in its first 6 months on the market, and almost never fully rebuilds after a bad one, even once the actual problem is genuinely solved. Now here's why I've spent all this time talking about a gun that most of you watching will probably never own. Because the 4 mistakes that doomed it never disappeared. They didn't stay trapped in one product or one decade. They simply changed shape. Different companies, different marketing campaigns, different buzzwords, but exactly the same pattern. Once you know what to look for, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Every January at SHOT Show, the cycle starts all over again. A manufacturer unveils the next revolutionary handgun or rifle. The booth is packed, the lights are bright, and every influencer with a camera is filming their first look. The company promises lighter weight, higher capacity, a better trigger, or some feature that's supposedly going to change the industry forever. Within hours, social media is flooded with videos calling it a game changer. Within days, pre-orders open. Within weeks, thousands of people have bought a gun that almost nobody outside the company has actually lived with. That's the part people forget. A prototype on a convention floor is not the same thing as a production gun that's been carried every day, dropped in the dirt, left in hot trucks, run dirty, cleaned badly, and fired thousands of times by ordinary people. The gun on display only has to survive a weekend. The one you buy has to survive years. I still see first-time buyers lining up to pre-order guns before a single independent reviewer has put 500, 1,000, or 2,000 rounds through a regular retail sample. That's not testing, that's marketing. There's a huge difference between a review filmed the day an embargo lifts and a review made 6 months later by someone who's actually worn the finish off the gun. Time has a funny way of exposing things that launch videos never mention. I also keep seeing companies invent solutions to problems almost nobody actually had. Every year it's something different. Ultra-light triggers, extra short grips, super thin slides, brand new proprietary cartridges that promise to replace everything else. Every feature gets presented as the next evolution. But sometimes, all it's really doing is making the gun more complicated while solving a problem that didn't exist in the first place. Innovation is great when it genuinely improves reliability or shootability. Innovation for the sake of creating a headline usually ages a lot less gracefully. Then comes the part companies never want to talk about. When a problem starts showing up in customers' hands, how does the manufacturer respond? The best companies get ahead of it immediately. They admit the issue, explain what's happening, issue repairs or replacements, and keep customers informed every step of the way. Most shooters are surprisingly forgiving when a company is honest. Mechanical products fail. People understand that. What people don't forgive is silence. Trying to quietly update production while pretending nothing was ever wrong almost always backfires. Shooters compare serial numbers. They post pictures online. Forums start connecting dots. Rumors spread faster than facts, and suddenly the company isn't just dealing with a mechanical problem. They're dealing with a trust problem. Trust is much harder to rebuild than a pistol. So if someone walks into my shop today, points at the newest release in the display case, and asks, "Should I buy it?" Here's exactly what I tell them. First, let the design grow up. A firearm that's been on the market for 3, 4, or 5 years has already answered most of the important questions. Thousands of owners have carried it, cleaned it, abused it, and talked about it online. If there's a weak extractor, people know. If magazines crack, people know. If a spring wears out too early, people know. Time is the one test that no marketing department can fake. Launch week reviews have their place, but remember what those reviewers actually have. Many are shooting hand-picked samples, supplied directly by the manufacturer, under ideal conditions. That doesn't mean they're dishonest. It simply means they haven't owned the gun long enough to discover the issues that only appear after months of real use. Second, don't obsess over the overall star rating. Look for patterns. Every firearm ever made has unhappy owners. Every manufacturer ships the occasional lemon. One bad review doesn't tell you much. What matters is repetition. If dozens of unrelated owners keep describing the exact same malfunction, the same broken part, the same feeding issue, the same premature wear, that isn't bad luck anymore. That's a pattern. Patterns tell you far more than averages ever will. One complaint is noise. 50 complaints describing the identical failure is data. The first year of a firearm's life is usually when its real reputation gets written. Companies can buy advertisements, sponsor influencers, and fill social media with polished videos, but they can't hide thousands of owners talking to each other. Third, and this is the advice almost everyone skips, actually shoot the gun before you buy it. Go to a rental range. Borrow one from a trusted friend. Attend a manufacturer demo day. Even 50 rounds through a firearm will teach you things no review ever can. Maybe the grip feels too small. Maybe the trigger doesn't agree with your finger. Maybe the sights don't work well with your eyes. Maybe the recoil feels completely different from what everyone online claimed. Or maybe you discover it's absolutely perfect for you. The point is that you'll know because you experienced it yourself, instead of trusting someone else's opinion. That's something the internet can never replace. And here's the honest truth before we wrap this story up. That pistol wasn't created by incompetent engineers or dishonest people. In many ways, it was a genuinely smart design with some innovative ideas. The mistake wasn't imagination, it was timing. The excitement around the launch got ahead of the engineering. Marketing moved faster than long-term testing, and once the problems reached customers, the company's reputation took the hit. Ironically, by the time many of those issues were corrected, the gun itself had become much better. Manufacturing improved, parts were updated, reliability increased. But hardly anyone noticed, because the first impression had already spread across forums, magazines, and YouTube videos. The internet rarely gives products a second first impression. That's the lesson this story has always been about. It's not really about one pistol. It's about every product that's rushed to market before it's truly ready. It happens with handguns. It happens with rifles. It happens with optics, cars, electronics, and just about every industry where excitement starts replacing patience. Good engineering takes time. Reliability can't be rushed. And no advertising campaign can erase months of real-world owner experiences. So the next time you see the newest must-have firearm taking over your feed, ask yourself one simple question. Has this gun actually earned its reputation? Or is it still borrowing one from the marketing department? I'd rather buy the gun that's been quietly working for 5 years than the one everyone's screaming about this week. Now I want to hear your story. What's the most hyped firearm you've ever bought that didn't live up to the promises? Did the manufacturer step up and make it right? Or were you left figuring it out on your own? Drop the brand, drop the model, and tell the real story down in the comments. Next time, we're flipping this entire conversation on its head. Instead of talking about overhyped launches, we're looking at the firearms that arrived with almost no fanfare, no flashy marketing, and no standing ovation at SHOT Show. Guns that quietly earned legendary reputations simply by working every single time you pulled the trigger. I'll see you in the next one. Shoot straight.